He always believed that controlling emotions was something natural, but he discovered in the hardest way possible that no one is born emotionally strong. Everyone is born vulnerable. The big controversy is that society romanticizes being emotional, when in truth most people are just reacting without thinking, living as prisoners of their own impulses. And this creates a chaotic, unstable life full of silent regrets. He realized that while he didn't master his own mind, he would always be driven by it. The counterintuitive truth is that real strength isn't in exploding, arguing, or having the last word. It's in remaining unshaken when everything around you tries to pull you off balance. This unshakable calm isn't luck, it's training. It's emotional discipline. It's a deep identity shift that very few have the courage to pursue. And it's exactly this path that separates men who control their lives from men controlled by their circumstances. He knows the pain the viewer carries often doesn't come from the problem itself, but from how he reacts to it. It comes from the message that steals sleep, the criticism that echoes in the mind, the argument that drains energy for hours. And deep down, there's a question nobody likes to admit. Why do I let this control me so much? This is the turning point, the moment when consciousness finally wakes up. The quick reward lies in understanding that the calm you seek isn't distant. It isn't in trips, expensive meditations, or magical books that promise instant peace. It's in small practices you can start today, still within this video. Simple practices, but powerful enough to transform your relationship with emotions in a matter of days. He will show you how to access this silent strength that already exists inside you. And perhaps the most curious and provocative part is this. You don't need to be a monk to master your emotions. You need to be disciplined. Because emotionally strong isn't the one who feels less. It's the one who responds better. And if you stay with him, you will learn how to build an internal control so solid that nothing and no one will be able to shake you. He always noticed that most people react without thinking, as if every emotion were an obligatory command. But with time, he understood that real power is born from emotional control, from that quiet ability to notice what he feels without becoming it. When he learned to pause before reacting, something changed. A kind of inner peace appeared that didn't depend on anyone. It's like watching a storm through the window. You see everything, but you don't get wet. That small distance between feeling and responding is where the identity shift begins to happen. He realized that those who master their own impulse create a safe internal territory where external chaos has no permission to enter. It's not that anger disappears, nor frustration, they're still there. But he learned to see them as visitors, not owners. This process strengthens his mental toughness because it requires him to hold the urge to fight back, attack, or justify himself. And when he succeeds, he feels the taste of real emotional maturity. It's as if life were testing him. Show me you've grown. Whenever he feels that heat rising, that urge to respond in the same tone, he remembers that no one wins anything by reacting at the peak of emotion. A simple example he uses is this. When he receives a harsh message, instead of replying immediately, he locks the phone, stands up, and drinks a glass of water. It seems silly, but this microaction activates his self-discipline and breaks the impulsive cycle. It works like pressing an emotional reset button without needing to say a word. He understands that responding wisely doesn't mean being passive, but choosing the right moment to act. The truth is that those who master this art start playing a game the impulsive don't even know exists. He observes first, interprets later, and only then decides whether it's worth answering. This habit gives him a clarity many people have never experienced. And this clarity feeds directly into that inner peace so few are willing to pursue. When he began practicing this pause, he realized that many situations that used to seem huge became small. He saw that most conflicts are born not from the problem itself, but from the rushed way people react. A simple wait 5 minutes changed relationships, avoided arguments, and built bridges where there were only walls. It's fascinating how life becomes lighter when you replace reactivity with emotional intelligence. He even uses a metaphor to remember this. Imagine an experienced fisherman. He knows that if he pulls the line too hard, the fish escapes, but if he stays patient, he gains control. With emotions, it's the same. This strategic vision reinforces his mental toughness, because it requires calm when the body asks for speed. And in the end, he always notices it was worth holding the wave. On days when he feels more tired or stressed, he knows the risk of reacting badly increases. So he creates small rituals. He takes 3 deep breaths before answering someone, walks for 10 minutes when he feels anger, or writes what he's feeling in a notes app. These simple but deep practices build self-discipline daily. He understood that his mind works better when it has space to reorganize emotions before acting. Little by little, this art of pausing shaped who he is. The identity shift happened so naturally that one day he realized he no longer reacted the way he used to. His answers became calmer, his conversations lighter, and his presence firmer. And without noticing, this new way of existing was preparing him for something even greater, something that would appear the moment he faced the intense impulse to react. He always noticed that the impulse to react appears quickly, almost like an automatic reflex of the body. A sharp message, a harsh tone, an unexpected comment, and suddenly the heart speeds up, the breathing shifts, and tension rises in the shoulders. It's in that instant that his emotional control is tested. He understands that this physical reaction isn't an enemy. It's just a body trying to protect him. But it's exactly there that his self-discipline begins to work. With time, he learned that there's a precious space between what he feels and what he does. That small interval, that nearly invisible gap, is where maturity lives. When he manages to see this space, he creates the chance to respond with wisdom, not impulsiveness. And this strengthens his mental toughness, because it demands a quiet kind of courage, the courage not to give in to the first impulse. He realizes that life always rewards those who master seconds, not those who waste minutes reacting badly. He uses practical strategies to deal with these triggers. For example, when he feels his body heating up and that urge to snap back grows strong, he immediately changes his environment. He walks to the balcony, takes a deep breath, and looks at the sky for a few seconds. This physical shift breaks the automatic pattern. By doing this, he gives the brain time to move from emotional mode back to rational mode. It's a simple but powerful technique that he learned after realizing how many conflicts are born from not doing anything for just 5 seconds. He also understands that the impulse to react isn't a sign of weakness, it's biology. The brain tries to react first to avoid pain or threat, but when he masters this process, he feels a real increase in inner peace. After all, it's not the emotion that controls him, it's he who guides the emotion. This awareness changes his entire internal game. It's almost as if he puts his mind into slow motion, allowing him to see details no one notices when they respond in a hurry. He realized that the impulse to react isn't the same every day. When he's tired, hungry, or stressed, the emotional trigger becomes more sensitive. That's why he began taking better care of himself, hydrating, sleeping earlier, organizing his routine. It seems simple, but basic care creates emotional stability. He understood that taking care of the body is a fundamental pillar to keep emotional control working when life gets tense. A practice he recommends to anyone is training delayed responses. When he receives a provoking message, he writes the answer in a note, but doesn't send it. He leaves it there. After a few minutes, he rereads it and almost always realizes that the reaction no longer represents who he is. This habit not only avoids unnecessary conflicts, but strengthens his identity shift, showing that he is becoming someone more conscious and centered. He knows that living at the mercy of impulse is living like an emotional puppet. So, whenever he feels his body reacting, he asks himself, will this answer make me proud an hour from now? This simple question brings immediate clarity. He learned that his future cannot be decided by the mood of 5 seconds. And this perspective builds a type of mental toughness understood only by those who observe before acting. Over time, by facing this impulse repeatedly, he realized that not reacting immediately is a disguised superpower. Few master it because it requires daily practice and constant attention to the body. But the more he exercises this pause, the more he notices that something deeper is shifting inside him, a silent transition preparing the ground for the next level of emotional maturity, where he learns to let people be wrong about him. He realized that one of the greatest freedoms in life is accepting that some people will simply interpret everything about him incorrectly. No matter how much he tries to explain, justify, or clarify, those who don't want to understand won't understand. And interestingly, when he stopped seeking approval, he began to feel an inner peace he had never experienced before. It's like dropping a heavy suitcase he had been carrying without noticing. That's where his deepest internal transformation began. With time, he understood that trying to change someone's opinion is like trying to hold wind in his hands. No matter how hard he tries, it slips through his fingers. He realized that his energy is far too precious to waste on convincing people who already decided what they want to think. And choosing to preserve his own peace strengthens his emotional control, because it shows that he doesn't need to react to every misunderstanding that crosses his path. He even jokes with himself. If there are people who say the moon doesn't exist, why would I need to prove anything to anyone? This touch of humor helps soften internal tension and reinforces his mental toughness, because it's not weakness to let people think whatever they want. It's emotional intelligence. The constant need for validation is a prison most people don't even realize they're living in. He chose to walk out of it, and that decision shaped his identity shift profoundly. In practical situations, he started responding to indirect attacks with silence, not out of fear, but out of strategy. When someone misinterprets him, he takes a deep breath, reads it again, and asks himself, "Does this deserve my energy?" Most of the time, the answer is no. And when it's no, he moves on with an emotional elegance impulsive people will never understand. This habit protects his mind from unnecessary conflicts. He also realized that the need to over-explain was actually a hidden attempt to seek validation. And when he understood that, he began working on his internal self-discipline. Instead of explaining everything, he focuses on living coherently. He understood that character speaks louder than explanations. There's no point trying to prove who he is. Those who can see will see. Those who can't remain blind even if he draws it out. When someone judges him incorrectly, he uses it as a tool for growth. Instead of defending himself, he asks, "Why did this bother me so much?" Many times he discovers the discomfort isn't about the person, but something inside him. This constant self-analysis is part of his identity shift journey, and it requires courage to look at himself honestly. He knows every external judgment reveals something about his internal world. A practice he recommends is writing down 3 situations at the end of the day where he was misunderstood and asking, "Does this really matter?" 9 out of 10 times, the answer is no. This daily exercise drastically reduces social anxiety and increases inner peace. He notices that other people's opinions only weigh heavily when he himself is light inside. When he strengthens his essence, other people's words lose their power. Over time, accepting that people can be wrong about him became one of the greatest forms of emotional freedom he has ever experienced. He doesn't fight it anymore. He lets people think, talk, invent. He stays firm, centered, calm. And by choosing this posture, he opens space for something even deeper, the ability to sit with discomfort without running away from it. He realized that discomfort isn't an enemy, but a teacher. Every time something bothered him, a criticism, a doubt, a feeling of inadequacy, his first reaction was always to run from it. But over time, he understood that running only prolonged the pain. When he finally started sitting with discomfort, he discovered a kind of inner peace that comes from the courage to look inside without filters. And that's where his greatest emotional transformation began. Discomfort, in truth, always carries a message. When he decides to stay there, present, feeling it, he notices nuances he used to ignore by rushing. He sees repeated patterns, hidden emotions, stories he carried unknowingly. This act of remaining strengthens his mental toughness because it requires patience and emotional maturity. He understands that those who master discomfort master themselves, and that is emotional control in its purest form. In practical situations, he uses discomfort as a signal that something needs adjustment. If he feels jealousy, he looks for the source. If he feels anger, he analyzes the trigger. If he feels fear, he investigates the story behind it. He even has a simple ritual. When something hurts, he writes 3 questions on paper. What am I feeling? Why did this affect me so much? What does this reveal about me? This habit deepens his identity shift because it brings clarity about who he is becoming. He also understands that sitting with discomfort doesn't mean accepting eternal suffering. It simply means not running away from what must be faced. It's like someone training at the gym. The muscle only grows when it faces resistance. The mind works the same way. Each time he stays there, breathing, observing, allowing the sensation to exist, he notices discomfort losing power, and his inner strength increasing. The curious part is that the more he practices this, the more he realizes that much of his pain was created by imagination itself. The fear of failing, for example, almost never happened in reality. It was a mental movie. When he sits with that fear in silence, he sees the movie collapse. And in this process, his self-discipline strengthens, because he learns to act even when emotion tries to push him away from what matters. He discovered that great leaders and great accomplishments were built by people who learned to tolerate discomfort. Whether starting a project, ending a relationship, changing careers, or accepting a difficult truth, all require the courage to remain in tension. He even draws inspiration from real examples. Musashi Mandela, Viktor Frankl, all of them mastered their internal storms before changing the external world. And this awareness pushes him to grow. When discomfort arrives, he no longer runs. He breathes, observes, welcomes. He knows that the strongest emotion is often the one most important to understand, and by staying with it, he builds an invisible fortress no one can take from him. This fortress shapes his mental toughness and opens space for a more stable and conscious emotional life. He realizes that running never took him far, but courage always does. And every time he sits with what bothers him, he feels he is leveling up internally. It's almost as if each faced discomfort opens a new door inside his own mind. And without noticing, this silent habit began preparing him for another essential emotional strength, the ability to use silence as a strategy, not as weakness. He realized that silence isn't the absence of strength, it's the presence of power. While many people speak without thinking, he discovered that there is a kind of emotional control that only appears when the mouth stays quiet and the mind listens. Instead of reacting immediately, he allows silence to do the heavy lifting. And interestingly, this simple act creates a field of inner peace around him, as if quietness protects his clarity. Silence isn't passivity, it's strategy. When he pauses before answering, he can see nuances that would be invisible in a rush. He notices tones, intentions, and especially the impact his response may have going forward. This ability strengthens his mental toughness, because it requires maturity to resist the urge to break the tension by saying anything. He understood that sometimes the smartest word is none at all. In conflict, silence became his greatest tool. When someone tries to provoke him, he doesn't react right away. He observes. This brief interval destabilizes those who seek a fight, while protecting his own energy. In practice, he saw that silence disarms arguments that were already lost from the start. It's like putting out a fire without touching the hose. You simply refuse to throw fuel on it. He also uses silence as a form of reflection. In moments of doubt, he steps back, avoids noise, puts his phone on airplane mode, and lets his mind breathe. That's where ideas arise, emotions reorganize, and important decisions become clearer. He even jokes. Few people change their lives because few people hear what they think in silence. But he learned, sometimes a mind only needs zero noise. In daily life, silence also became part of his strategy. In the morning, he reserves 5 minutes to do nothing, just breathe. It seems simple, but it has a deep impact on how he handles the rest of the day. This ritual strengthens his self-discipline and opens space for more aligned thoughts. He knows that if he starts the day in silence, he ends it with more emotional control. He realized that silence also strengthens relationships. When someone vents, he doesn't interrupt. He lets the person finish. When someone criticizes him, he doesn't rush to defend himself. He listens. This posture communicates strength and maturity. Many times, simply listening is enough to solve a conflict before it becomes a storm. Clarity is born when no one tries to win by shouting. Silence is also the filter that prevents him from saying things he will regret later. How many times do thoughtless words create unnecessary chaos? He understood that silence is the bodyguard of peace. and adopting this posture strengthened his identity shift. After all, the older version of him reacted without thinking. The new one acts with precision, and emotional precision is rare. Over time, valuing silence became a refined skill, almost an invisible superpower. He realizes that the quieter he is inside, the stronger he is outside. And this silent strength opens the way for another deep lesson, knowing when pride is trying to speak louder than peace. He discovered that pride is a loud actor inside the mind. Whenever something hurts his ego, he feels that inner voice wanting to shout, prove, argue, win. But over time, he realized that acting guided by pride is like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. Pride wants immediate reaction. Wisdom asks for calm. And when he chooses calm, he feels his emotional control expanding almost visibly. Taming pride doesn't mean being weak. It means being smart. He understood that the people who react the most are exactly the ones with the least control over themselves. So when that urge to defend himself arises, he takes a deep breath and asks, is this for peace or for ego? That question alone creates internal space for clearer vision. It's an act of self-discipline to stay silent when the ego wants to perform. In practical situations, he noticed that many conflicts are born from misunderstandings that pride transforms into epic battles. When someone says something harsh, he tries to remember that not everything is personal. This perspective strengthens his mental toughness because it requires restraint. He knows that the one who keeps calm controls the situation. The one who loses his head loses control, and he refuses to be led by that impulsive version of himself. He even uses humor to deal with his ego. Whenever he feels the impulse to prove he's right, he thinks, is my ego asking for likes right now? This small internal joke breaks the impulsive cycle. He realizes that the truth doesn't need to be shouted to exist. The truth stays. Pride is what passes. This awareness brings a kind of inner peace that reflects in how he handles criticism and provocation. When pride pulls him toward useless arguments, he chooses restraint. Not everything needs correcting, responding, or justifying. Sometimes the wisest answer is simply moving on with emotional elegance. He learned that silence, when guided by the right intention, is the shovel that buries the ego before the ego buries him. This molds his identity shift in a deep way. In relationships, he realized that pride is the silent villain behind many broken connections. An unspoken word, an avoided apology, an acknowledgement swallowed, all of this creates unnecessary distance. He understood that admitting a mistake doesn't diminish anyone. It elevates them. It takes real strength to say you're right, and that strength builds maturity. Pride only builds walls. Another habit he developed is observing the origin of pride. Often, it's not about the present moment, but about old unhealed wounds. He notices that each trigger is a clue, an invitation to heal something inside himself. This process deepens his identity shift because it turns reactivity into self-awareness. He understood that those who master their own pride are always one step ahead. And the more he learns to tame this internal lion, the more he realizes that true strength isn't in reacting, it's in remaining unshaken. Taming pride is surviving his own internal storms. And in that journey, he starts discovering an even more refined power, the ability to create emotional space between what he feels and what he does. He realized that creating space between what he feels and what he does is one of the most powerful abilities someone can develop. Emotions arrive like fast waves, sometimes violent, but they don't need to dictate action. He discovered that when he pauses for a few seconds, he creates an inner field where emotional control can breathe. That simple interval changes everything. Decisions become clearer, impulses lose strength, and the mind finds inner peace. He understood that this space doesn't appear naturally, it's trained. It's like stretching the mind, so it doesn't contract in front of the first stimulus. Whenever a strong emotion rises, he asks himself, does this need to be solved now, or just felt? That question opens a portal to emotional maturity, strengthening his mental toughness. He realizes that almost nothing in life requires an instant response, but almost everything requires awareness. In practice, he uses small physical triggers to activate this space. When he feels his body reacting, he slowly tightens and relaxes his hands, takes 3 deep breaths, or simply looks up for 2 seconds. These gestures interrupt the automatic pattern and give him back the ability to decide. It's like pressing the pause the world button, allowing his self-discipline to step forward before emotion takes control of his behavior. He also learned that this space reduces regrets. How many times have words said in the heat of the moment caused unnecessary damage? When he waits, observes, and then acts, he avoids those invisible wounds that corrode relationships and self-confidence. Creating space is protecting both the present and the future. It means acting as someone who already understands his own worth, someone who chooses with precision instead of pressure. This interval between feeling and acting also showed him that emotions are not permanent, that intense anger disappears after a few minutes, anxiety changes shape, fear dissolves when analyzed. He realized that reacting based on something so unstable is like building a house on quicksand. When he waits, he sees the emotion for what it is, temporary, and this strengthens his identity shift because it brings him closer to the calm, conscious, steady version of himself. Sometimes he even uses humor to remind himself that emotional urgency is deceptive. He tells himself, "If I answer now, it's my emotion typing. Better wait for my reason to come back from lunch." This light joke helps him maintain the healthy distance between stimulus and reaction, and by doing that, he notices that life flows more steadily, with less chaos and more direction. He also notices that this space doesn't distance him from emotions. It brings him closer to them in a more honest way. He feels everything, but he doesn't become everything he feels. He feels anger, but doesn't become anger. He feels fear, but doesn't become fear. This type of emotional presence is rare and powerful. The more he practices, the more he sees that this ability is the secret foundation of emotionally mature people and leaders who don't break easily. With time, creating this space became one of the biggest strategies of his life. He understood that inside this interval lives his true emotional freedom. And as the space expands, he begins to see something even deeper. The freedom that appears when he finally stops trying to control other people. He realized that one of the greatest illusions in life is believing he can control how other people think, feel, or act. The more he tried to adjust someone else's behavior, the more tired and drained he became. One day, he finally understood that people only see the world through their own level of consciousness. And that realization brought a different kind of inner peace, almost liberating. He understood that trying to control someone is like trying to command the wind, impossible and exhausting. With time, he saw that each person carries their own stories, traumas, beliefs, and blocks. People don't always treat him poorly because of him. Sometimes they don't even notice the shadows they project. When he accepted this, his mental toughness grew, because he no longer wastes energy trying to shape what is outside his reach. He discovered that real power lies in controlling only what is inside him: thoughts, reactions, boundaries, presence. He noticed that the desire to control others is born, in truth, from fear. Fear of being rejected, misunderstood, hurt, or ignored. But when he lets that fear dissolve, he sees his emotional control become stronger. He learned that no one needs to be fixed for him to have peace. That peace must come from within. And when it comes from within, no one can take it away. This understanding changed the entire way he relates to people. In practice, he began observing more and interfering less. When someone acts incoherently, he doesn't try to fix them. He sets boundaries. When someone shows immaturity, he doesn't try to teach them. He simply distances himself wisely. This posture requires self-discipline because it's easy to fall into the temptation of wanting to save or correct. He understood that every person moves at their own pace, and pushing someone only creates more resistance. He also realized that trying to control the behavior of others is a direct path to emotional exhaustion. So now he invests that energy where it actually makes a difference, controlling his own response. He focuses on reacting with calmness, keeping his essence steady, protecting his energy. And as he does that, he notices the environment around him becoming more balanced. Interestingly, when he stops trying to control, life begins to cooperate in a different way. One truth he discovered is that no one changes because someone asked. They change because they feel an internal need. So instead of trying to convince people to be better, he chooses to be an example. He lives with integrity, clarity, and emotional maturity. This silent posture creates real impact because it inspires without imposing. It's a type of leadership that comes from the identity shift, a transformation from the inside out. He also learned that controlling others is a distraction that pulls him away from himself. Every minute he spends trying to adjust someone is a minute he could spend building his own life. And when he removes his attention from others' behavior, space opens up for growth, learning, and evolution. He notices that internal control produces external results, but external control only produces frustration. This understanding made him emotionally lighter and much stronger. Over time, stopping the desire to control others became one of the greatest signs of maturity he ever developed. He realized that emotional freedom is born when he focuses only on what's in his hands, his choices. And by embracing this truth, he began to see more clearly another essential power for keeping his peace, knowing exactly when to stop explaining himself. He realized that over-explaining is one of the most subtle ways to lose energy. Many times, he tried to justify every detail, every choice, every silence, as if he needed to constantly prove that his intentions were good. One day, it hit him. Those who want to understand will understand even in a gesture. Those who don't want to understand won't understand even with a drawn-out explanation. And that clarity brought a powerful inner peace, like finally taking off an invisible backpack he had been carrying. He understood that over-explaining is a form of seeking validation. It's like extending your heart, hoping the other person will handle it gently. But when he realized that his inner truth didn't need external approval, something shifted in his posture. That realization strengthened his mental toughness, because it takes courage to stay firm even when the other person frowns. He saw that his peace is worth infinitely more than convincing someone. In practical situations, he began applying a simple rule. If the explanation needs to be too long, it's because the person doesn't want clarity. They want control. And he no longer plays that game. Today, when someone distorts what he says or questions his intentions, he responds with clarity and stops there. No long paragraphs, no emotional novels, no unnecessary justifications. This shift requires self-discipline, but it also gives back time, energy, and mental health. He also realized that mature people don't demand exaggerated explanations. They observe behavior, not speeches. Immature people demand endless explanations because they're looking for loopholes to invalidate what you say. When he noticed this, he realized the best way to deal with it is with strategic silence. Silence puts everyone in their place and reveals who is truly interested in the truth, and that strengthens his emotional control. He even developed a curious habit. When he feels himself over-explaining, he takes a deep breath and asks internally, "Am I explaining to clarify or to be accepted?" The answer always shows him the path. Most of the time, he realizes he was trying to be accepted, and that awareness feeds his identity shift because it directs him toward a version of himself that chooses authenticity over approval. With time, he noticed that the people who really matter never demand exaggerated explanations. They see his intentions through the way he talks, looks, and behaves daily. Those who insist on endless explanations are usually trapped in their own ego. He understood that it's not his job to educate, correct, or convince these people. His job is to live with coherence. The rest life reveals on its own. In practice, stopping the habit of over-explaining opened more space in his schedule, mind, and even heart. He started using that energy to study, train, grow, invest, strengthen his life. He discovered that when he doesn't waste energy on justifications, he has energy left to build. And that is a type of emotional freedom few ever experience, because it requires the maturity of choosing yourself before choosing to please others. And as he learned to stop explaining himself, he noticed that his presence became firmer. He talks less, shows more, acts more, justifies less. And this silent change prepares him for a more advanced stage of emotional self-care, protecting his energy with clear, firm, and non-negotiable boundaries. He realized that energy is currency, and one of the most valuable. It doesn't matter how intelligent, disciplined, or strategic someone is. If they are drained, everything collapses. For a long time, He spent his energy on useless conversations, predictable conflicts, people who didn't want to grow, and problems that weren't even his. Until one day he understood. Protecting his own energy isn't selfishness, it's emotional survival. That clarity brought a deep sense of inner peace. He began noticing that his energy leaks where his focus is poorly directed. When he enters small arguments, he loses strength. When he tries to solve other people's lives, he loses strength. When he absorbs criticism from those who built nothing, he loses strength. Meanwhile, his goals are there, waiting. When he understood this, his mental toughness strengthened because he finally realized that priorities aren't what appear, they're what remain. In practice, he adopted clear emotional boundaries. Today, he says no naturally. No to invitations that derail him. No to conversations that drain him. No to relationships that demand too much and return too little. This no is an advanced form of self-discipline because it requires courage to frustrate external expectations in favor of protecting his own sanity. He discovered that when he protects his energy, he protects his entire life. He also realized that protecting energy means protecting his inner environment. That's why he filters what he consumes. Less gossip, more learning. Less noise, more silence. Less screens, more reading. He even created a routine with books that elevate his awareness, such as The Power of Habit, Meditations, and Think and Grow Rich. This kind of mental nutrition reinforces his emotional control because it puts his mind in a state of strength and clarity. One of the greatest keys he discovered is that not everyone deserves unlimited access to his energy. Those who respect him add. Those who drain him subtract. And he learned to differentiate not by what people say, but by what they cause internally. If he feels lighter after talking to someone, that's alignment. If he feels heavier, that's a boundary. The body never lies. And listening to it became an essential part of his identity shift. He also realized that protecting energy doesn't mean isolating himself. It means preserving himself. He still helps those who need it, but not at the cost of himself. He learned to share, not to sacrifice. This emotional maturity redirects his strength toward what really matters: goals, health, projects, purpose. He finds it ironic how, after he started protecting his energy, his productivity skyrocketed without needing to do more, just better. Another habit he cultivated was staying alert to the small thieves of energy, scrolling social media without purpose, responding impulsively to messages, taking on responsibilities that aren't his. Each of these small actions steals fragments of focus. So he began observing, cutting, and reorganizing. This practice refined his emotional control and left his mind much lighter and more prepared for bigger challenges. Over time, protecting his energy became his invisible shield. He understood that only those who care for their internal fuel reach the next level in life. And as he strengthened the shield, he noticed that there is an even more advanced stage of emotional maturity, leading himself before his emotions try to lead his path. He realized that emotional leadership begins long before leading other people. It begins by leading himself. He understood that if he allowed his emotions to drive his actions, he would live like a drifting boat, going wherever the wind of impulsiveness pushed him. But when he became aware of this, something changed. He began taking control of his inner steering wheel. That movement awakened a kind of emotional control that felt almost like a superpower. He realized that when he leads his emotions, he leads his life. He also understood that emotions are real, but not permanent. A strong anger lasts minutes. A deep sadness gives way to relief. Fear, when faced, loses its force. Knowing this strengthened his mental toughness, because it showed him that acting based on temporary emotions creates long-lasting consequences. So he started doing something simple but powerful. Before making big decisions, he waits. He gives time for emotion to go down and clarity to rise. In practice, he created rituals to lead his mind. Instead of waking up and diving straight into the chaos of the world, he starts the day with intention. 5 minutes of silence, 3 deep breaths, 2 clear goals for the day. It seems small, but these rituals set the tone for the next hours. And the more he repeats them, the more he notices how his self-discipline strengthens. He feels he is building an inner version of himself, that is more organized and directed. He also realized that leading himself means choosing values before choosing responses. He asked himself, who do I want to be in this moment? That simple reflection completely changes how he acts. When he chooses to act guided by values, respect, firmness, calmness, maturity, his reactions become lighter and more aligned. This deepens his identity shift because he stops acting like who he was and starts acting like who he wants to become. During conflicts, he chooses to observe instead of reacting. He notices the tone, the environment, and his own body. And before responding, he chooses the posture that best represents his intention. Sometimes it's firmness, sometimes it's silence, sometimes it's direct clarity. This emotional flexibility is pure wisdom. And he understood that wisdom isn't knowing everything, it's knowing how to lead himself. This increases his inner peace because he stops being a slave to the moment. He also recognized that emotional leadership requires responsibility. There is no use blaming the world, people, or circumstances. If the reaction is his, the responsibility is also his. This understanding, although uncomfortable at first, freed his mind. He realized that when he takes responsibility for his emotions, nothing else has power over him. And that feeling is one of the highest forms of emotional control. A practice he adopted was reviewing his day at night. He asks, where did I lead myself well? And where did I let emotion take the wheel? He doesn't blame himself, he simply observes. This daily observation trained his mind to notice patterns and adjust behaviors. It's as if he were constantly calibrating his emotional compass. And that constant calibration strengthened his maturity in ways he never imagined. Over time, leading himself became the foundation of all his evolution. He realized that when he puts his emotions in the passenger seat, life flows with more direction, purpose, and stability. And now, having completed this journey through the pillars of emotional mastery, he is ready for the powerful introduction that will open this entire audiobook with impact. You noticed something throughout this entire video, even if you didn't say it out loud. The problem was never the emotion, it was always how you dealt with it. And that hurts to admit, because it means the life you have today. The conflicts, the regrets, the bad decisions, all of it was created in moments when you let your emotions choose for you. But here's the shock. If you keep living like this, nothing will change. Nothing. The harsh truth is that the world doesn't wait for you to become emotionally strong. It runs over you. It tests your calm, challenges your patience, provokes your pride. And if you don't learn to master this now, the next few weeks will look exactly like the last ones. Same problems, same reactions, same feeling of being stuck in your own cycle. Do you really want your life to stay like this? Stop and answer honestly. If you had emotional control today, how many bad decisions would you have avoided? If you had mental toughness, how many opportunities would you have embraced? If you had inner peace, how much energy would you have saved in the last months? If you had self-discipline, where would you be right now? The truth is simple and brutal. Those who master their emotions master their life. Those who don't are mastered. This isn't poetry. It's reality. And you already know this, because you felt the weight of every word while watching. Now, you have two choices. Leave this video and stay exactly the same, or finally take control of your life, once and for all. And let me tell you something. Mentor to student, person to person. No one is going to do this for you. Not your friends, not your family, not time, not destiny. The emotional discipline you seek only appears when you decide to keep learning, evolving, and building this strong mentality every day. And if you made it this far, it's because you know you need this. It's not good to have. It's necessary. So make the move that separates those who change from those who only dream of changing. Subscribe to the channel right now, turn on the notifications, and commit to your new emotional identity. Because if you truly want to become unshakable, your transformation doesn't end here. It begins here.